Także dzień dobry Państwu, witam na tym niezwykle zadziwiającym spotkaniu. Znaczy nas samych dziwi to, że to spotkanie w ogóle dochodzi do skutku. Dlatego, że tyle, ile wysiłku włożyliśmy w to, żeby, szczególnie Małgosia Wosińska, żeby to spotkanie można było zorganizować, to naprawdę jest opowieść na długo. W każdym razie to ambasada jakaś nie chciała wydać wizy, szczególnie ambasada polska w Bangkoku. To był kłopot z gościem z Bośni. Także to był olbrzymi problem, ale udało się. I to jest naprawdę tego typu spotkanie, mam wrażenie, pierwsze w Warszawie i już za to możemy się tym się cieszyć. Może ja zacznę, zamiast teraz słowa wstępnego, najpierw przedstawię naszych gości. Tak żeby Państwo, powiedziałbym, orientowali się, kto jest kto. Z Kambodży, z Phnom Penh dokładnie, przybyła Sovicheth Meta. Jest pierwszą osobą wśród Kambodżańczyków, która wprowadziła temat Holokaustu do myślenia o zbrodni, która dokonała się w Kambodży i która przetłumaczyła i przygotowała taką książkę, która nosi tytuł Pytania, które zadaje o Holokauście. The questions I'm asked about the Holocaust. I to jest książka, która weszła do kurikulum szkolnego, to znaczy, że ona jest rozpowszechniana w szkołach i staje się jakimś bardzo ważnym elementem. Dodam, że Meta jest naprawdę młodą osobą i można powiedzieć, traktuje swoją pracę nie jako pracę, ale jako, powiedziałbym, nazwałbym to powołanie, vocation. Pracuje od 2018 roku w Centrum Dokumentacji w Kambodży, pełniąc różne funkcje i przygotowując szereg programów i pisząc wiele o samej zbrodni na terenie Kambodży. Zresztą myślę, że Meta powie też również o losie swojej rodziny w trakcie tej wojny domowej. Paul pochodzi z Rwandy. Spotkaliśmy się już w Auschwitz, w obozie, znaczy tam w czasie jednej z konferencji. Już tak, oczywiście. Jest socjologiem z wykształcenia i obecnie jest kierownikiem zespołu do spraw rozwoju treści cyfrowych w Departamencie Edukacji do spraw ludobójstwa w Kigali. Przepraszam, to jest taka długa nazwa, ale pozwalam sobie ją dokładnie zacytować. Także w tym Centrum Archiwizacji, Dokumentacji sporządza się jakby cały, taki powiedziałbym, kategoryzuje i przedstawia obraz tej wojny domowej czy rzezi dokonanej na Tutsi w 1994 roku w Rwandzie. I jest też, co ważne, jest jednym z ocalałych, kiedy wybuchła ta rzeź, miał lat 16. Myślę, że też będzie się dzielił tym doświadczeniem z nami i opowiadał i przedstawi swoją historię. Następna osoba, którą chciałbym przedstawić, nazywa się Amra Begić. Amra Begić pracuje w takim miejscu pamięci Srebrenicy. Wszyscy wiemy, co to była Srebrenica, co tam się stało. Można powiedzieć, że ona jest też jedną z ofiar tego procesu ludobójczego. Straciła w czasie zabijania muzułmanów ojca i dziadka w 1995 roku. Z zawodu jest specjalistą od kryminologii, prawa kryminalnego. Pracuje jako wicedyrektor tego ośrodka. I wreszcie chciałem przedstawić też naszego znajomego. I to jest ta przyjemność, że spotykamy się po raz kolejny. Mianowicie przedstawiam Marina Yanna. Marina Yanna. Marin Yann, jak wybuchło rzeź chyba 4 lata, tak? You had 4 years, yes? You were 4 years old.
6 years old.
About six. I historia jest, znaczy jedna z najbardziej wstrząsających, opisał ją w książce, którą przeczytałem i która nosi tytuł Ostatnie pamiętniki osieroconego dziecka. Stracił rodziców w czasie tego, i ośmiorodzeństwa w czasie tego genocydu kambodżańskiego przez jakiś dłuższy czas. O tym zresztą pewnie opowie. Przebywał w dżungli, gdzie się ukrywał przed czerwonymi Khmerami, potem jakimś cudem się ocalał, zresztą dzięki pomocy jakiegoś żołnierza chyba z czerwonych Khmerów. Obecnie mieszka w Houston i w Teksasie i pracuje jako obrońca ofiar klęsk żywiołowych i uchodźców, a również w samej Kambodży pełni funkcję dyrektora do spraw budowania własnej przyszłości. To jest organizacja non-profit działająca w Kambodży. Także to jest istotne dla nas, że każda tutaj obecna osoba reprezentuje jakiś rodzaj centrum edukacji, centrum informacji dotyczące ludobójstwa, mają z tym bardzo silne doświadczenia. Sądzę, że będzie to jeden z tematów, właśnie jak ta pamięć funkcjonuje, jak jest organizowana pamięć, jednym z tematów naszej rozmowy. Chciałbym przedstawić dwie osoby. Po pierwsze Małgosię Wosińską, która była organizatorką całego przyjazdu, sama zajmowała się Holokaustem, napisała pracę na temat zbrodni pod Wilnem, gdzie zginęło 50 000 Żydów, oraz zajmowała się przez wiele lat, pracując w terenie, zajmowała się wojną domową i genocydem w Rwandzie. Ostatnio opublikowała artykuł o masowych zabójstwach czy masowej śmierci w czasie rzezi na woli, rzezi na woli, więc ma spore doświadczenie, jeśli chodzi o badanie traumy i zbrodni ludobójczych. I Andrzej Krawczyk, nasz pracownik, też tam nasz pracownik, chcę podkreślić, że nasz pracownik, który był przez wiele lat ambasadorem w Pradze, ambasadorem w Bratysławie, a ostatnio był ambasadorem w Sarajewie. Napisał książkę i wydał książkę poświęconą Słowacji księdza Tiso, a więc czasów okupacyjnych. Jest to chyba jedyna tak kompetentna i tak szeroka historia Holokaustu na terenie Słowacji. Teraz, jak rozumiem, skończył pisać książkę o Czechach, a dla nas też wykonuje bardzo interesujące badania, ale to już zupełnie inna historia. Także doktor Andrzej Krawczyk będzie tutaj towarzyszył nam i współorganizował nasz panel dyskusyjny. Nasz panel dyskusyjny, jak powiedział, to jest spotkanie między ofiarami ludobójstwa. Bardzo dużo wiemy o swoistości i o niepowtarzalności zbrodni na Żydach i na Polakach dokonanych w Polsce. Wiemy, że każda z tych zbrodni ma charakter niepowtarzalny, ale zarazem chcemy przez zestawienie tych doświadczeń wejść na ten poziom ogólny, to znaczy chcielibyśmy zrozumieć, jaki jest ten mechanizm niszczenia i zabijania ludzi. Chcielibyśmy zrozumieć tą wspólnotę doświadczenia antropologicznego, jaka wiąże się z ludobójstwem, i chcielibyśmy zrozumieć też, jak funkcjonuje pamięć o tych zbrodniach w każdym z tych krajów. Myślę, że te pytania będą towarzyszyć nam cały czas, a oddaję teraz mikrofon Małgorzacie Wosińskiej, tak żeby ona już wzięła się za dyskusję. Proszę bardzo.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. I'm going to run Jerry's discussion in English. So yes, so everybody who would like to use headphones, it's the time right now. Thank you, Professor Śpiewak, for the invitation. We are so happy that we are here today together, and we are so happy that you also came, because we would like to run this discussion as a meeting point, and also we to treat Jewish Historical Institute as a place of meeting It was a shelter during the war, it was a shelter during the communist time, and it's a shelter also right now. So I would like to treat this meeting not only as a conference, but rather as a place of sharing experience, and you are welcome so much to ask questions any moment, because our guests are for you, we are for us. Professor Śpiewak gave an important statement that we have to understand other genocide. We know already that Auschwitz never again is kind of oxymoron. So we can recognize that the policy of memorial sites is really changing. Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum is much more open than it was before for the multi-directional narration and for multi-directional understanding of anthropology of genocide. The Holocaust is not only for Jewish people, it's a place of memory for everybody, it's a place of meeting for every testimony, and we have to learn from each other. And of course it's a question about how Holocaust studies would change, and it would change. It would change definitely, especially witnesses are passing away, and we have a witnessing of our genocide right now with us. So from the anthropological point of view, Holocaust is not only about Jewish Holocaust, also an anthropological, one of the greatest example, like every other example, greatest anthropological understanding of pain, and that's why we have to meet with witnesses right now, right here, with witnesses from all different parts of the world. And this is one statement about the changing of Holocaust studies, but there is another statement what I would like to ask. It's a personal statement. Everything what we are going to speak today is personal. And before we started, and the first question I will have to Meta, I will address to Meta, I would like to give a little personal statement. My name is Małgosia, in Yiddish Margolit. I am 33, I will turn 34 in the end of September. As Professor Śpiewak said, I was starting from Holocaust studies when I was really young person. I was 19, and I was so dedicated. I wanted to be so professional and so intellectual and critical in academic terms. But in the same moment, I was trying to stay neutral. And I never asked questions within my own family about everything. I just wanted to be a good researcher. And then I moved when I was 23 to Rwanda. And it changed me completely, because I met witnesses who are in my age, survivors who are in my age, or a bit older than I am, and I was sharing daily life with them. I was sharing dinners, I was sharing suppers, I am sharing family meetings. It wasn't intellectual, it was about daily life, it was about recovery, and I was really involved, I was working there. But then I asked questions to myself, I am still a researcher? Is it professional to be engaged also emotionally? Is it professional to be engaged personally? And I think today that yes, it is professional, and this is Holocaust studies, and this is genocide studies. And I arrived to Poland 3 years ago, I arrived to Europe 3 years ago, since 2 years I am in Warsaw working for Jewish Historical Institute. And only since 3 years, since last 3 years, I started asking questions within my own family, who I am. I started going to synagogue, I am attending Jewish community, and I needed to touch Rwanda. I needed to cross this intellectual approach, neutral and a bit cold sometimes, to really touch, to experience, not only to understand, but to be close, almost on an embodied level, to meet people, yes, to discuss, to go for coffee, to go for beer, just to share. And it changed me completely as a researcher, and changed me completely as a person. And is it personal? Yes, and I am proud of it. And I am proud of it only because I see that I am not the only one, because I would like to start from Meta, who is also very young. She's 22, and she started from Kambodża genocide, but very soon she turned to Holocaust. And I would like to ask a question. How touching of Holocaust topic helps you or influence your academic research, but mostly how it influences your being within your family and asking questions with your relatives.
Thank you, Małgosia, for the question. Actually, I started to translate the book a year ago, and I came across one question. It is actually the book that I translated. It is a compilation to Heidi Fried, a survivor from the Holocaust, and she compiled around 44 questions which were commonly asked to her one question, which she was being asked, what does she remember the most when she arrived at the Auschwitz? And she said that it was when she was separated from her parents. Her parents were lied to that they would be sent to take a bath and tomorrow to take a shower, and tomorrow they will meet again, but they were lied because instead of the bathroom they were sent to the gas chamber. And the last sentence she said that so her parent died and she did not have any chance to say goodbye or hug her one last time. So at that sentence, I was getting emotional during the translation because when I was 13 years old, my mom passed away due to cancer. So I know how painful it is to lose, our beloved parents. And then I thought back to my grandmother because I know that the genocide in Cambodia, the Khmerov, affected our family. But I have never had the heart to ask her any questions at all for the past, let's say, 19 years. I just know that genocide happened in Cambodia and that my family was affected, but I had never asked them any questions. So after I translated that question, I went back home and asked my grandmother what happened to our families. And at first, she did not want to answer my question at all. And I understand that it's not easy for a survivor to recount what happened again. It's like re-traumatize them. But then I started to ask her a question again. I said, I want you to know what happened to you, and maybe you can share it to me because today I translated a book and I told her about Haiti's stories. So she answered my questions. She told me that her parents died due to hunger and that her little brother was brought to kill in front of her, but she cannot say anything because otherwise the Khmerov will kill her too. And my great aunt, her eldest daughter, died too just because of a meal flu, and the Khmerov refused to cure her and said that she is just being lazy. She lied. And so I think that at that point, the translation of the Holocaust really helped me to, empathize with my families, because my grandmother, she said that she felt very grateful that I asked her questions, even though she is sad, but at least she gets something out of her chest. It has been, she always feels guilty because of the death of her little brother right in front of her. So I think that, by talking about the Holocaust, at least I can reflect back to the genocide in my own country. And I think that the translation of the Holocaust really can help the young Cambodian to understand about the genocide, to learn about what happened in our countries, and also reflect back to the Holocaust so that they know the consequences of such atrocities and to not make it happen again, because to talk about genocide, to study about genocide, it is a genocide prevention. And the book that I translated, we plan to distribute it to 3,000 high school students through our genocide education program. And the book will also become my main material for my research. I will do a research, and the topic will be about how the story of a Holocaust survivor helped to define genocide education in Cambodia, which is really important for the genocide prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Meta. I would like to just add that it's the first time for Meta to be in Europe, and first time for Meta to be in Poland, and whole staff from Doku Center in Cambodia is a bit jealous, and Meta task is write every day a little diary. And she is going to read this diary about being in Warsaw, Jewish Warsaw, the Jewish Historical Institute, to her staff when she will be back. And also it's amazing that even you are so young, you're representative of the whole institution right now, and we are very, very happy. And also a question about job I would like to address to Paul, because Paul, you are a survivor of genocide in Rwanda, 1994. And you are working in an institution which is parallel to Jewish Historical Institutes in the Kigali Memorial Center in Kigali, in the capital of Rwanda. It's a very important place. And you have a very serious job. You are responsible for digitalization of all archives. How many archives you have right there?
We have 300 testimonies, audio-visual testimonies.
No, but whole archives, when I think about the Gacaca trials, how many?
It's a lot. We have the Gacaca court proceedings. We have almost 60 million.
60 million. Mm-hmm.
That we have finished to scan, digitized, but the last phase is indexing because you need to access the documents.
To make it available.
Yeah.
So in Arosan Archive, so the place which is responsible for Second World War Archive, we have 80 million, from whole Europe. In Rwanda, 60 million. So it's a job, it's an amazing job. My question is, if you choose the job or the job choose you because of your identity as a survivor? It's a question because after the Second World War, survivors were working in Auschwitz Museum and in other concentration camps which were transforming the memorial site, and I can say it in Rwanda. But tell me more about how your personal story was a motivation for you to take this kind of responsibility for digitalization of mass atrocity.
Thank you,
It's working.
Thank you, Margot. So I chose the job and the job chose me. I explain. I started working on genocide issues since July 2010. And before that, 1 year before, I was working for a government institution that was dealing with the Gacaca. So I had gained experience.
Can you explain what Gacaca is for a person who doesn't know?
Okay. Gacaca is a traditional system of dealing with the disputes. Because after the genocide, we had many alleged perpetrators, around 1 million. People who were alleged to have committed the genocide. So imagine, it will take 130 years if you use ordinary courts.
Like Tribunal ŁIHA.
Yeah, these ordinary courts. And we had tried. After the 1994, we have set up special chambers to try the perpetrators. From 1994 to 1998, only 8,000 cases were tried. Imagine, only 8,000. At that speed, it will take 130 years to try everyone who was involved in the Gacaca. So those alleged would be dead, and also survivors would be dead, and the second generation would be dead. Everyone would be dead. So that's not justice. And then we remember the government and the people remembered that before the arrival of the European to colonize Africa, to colonize Rwanda, we had systems of justice. That is called Gacaca. It's a traditional system of dealing with disputes, like familial disputes, like injustice. It's social justice based on traditions and all customs of Rwandans. And then we took that system, remodeled it, renovated it, and mixed with modern principles of justice. And then it was still being called Gacaca, but it espoused some of the modern principles of justice. And then, and that principle, it's justice made by the people for themselves. So which means normal courts, we had to train people in their villages, people who were not involved in the genocide, and people who had not direct relationship with alleged perpetrators. So first of all, they had to be elected in the villages and trained, and laws to be written so that all the convicts are tried according to the law. So there has been many laws from 2000 to 2010. and they were modified 3 times, just to adjust to the as the matters were changing. They were adjusted. When the gacaca started, people, international community, human rights associations were criticizing, saying, no, there will be no fair trials because the villagers are not trained lawyers, blah, 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 but they would not offer a sustainable system to pull us out of the troubles that we were dealing, because there were trauma, because of the many alleged perpetrators were still at large. There are many survivors, many women raped, infected with the HIV. So we had many problems.
But you were a survivor by yourself, and you lost almost whole members of your family, and you decided to work with gacaca trials. Tell us about your perspective on that, because
I was going to talk about it, and in 2009 I was looking for a job, like a normal job, and then what I would find it was in gacaca, the government institution. And I was recruited as district coordinator. I was in charge of training and supervising 800 judges in 2 districts. So my job was to train on the law, on the gacaca law. So that's my first time to be in direct relation with the genocide issues, apart from being a genocide survivor. Because during genocide I lost my father, my mother, my 2 brothers and 1 sister, and over 100 extended family members, cousins, aunties. So they were all exterminated during the genocide.
How old were you?
I was 16 years old. So I worked for 1 year, and my contract ended, and then I met another survivor. So you mentioned that the people who worked at Kigali Genocide Memorial are themselves survivors. At that time, they were only survivors working there. And we met over a drink. I like beers, and he asked me, Ive Kamorosi, you know him, and he asked, oh, I heard that you worked in gacaca, but we have a project. We are working with the Shaw Foundation. There's an indexing project, so we would like to train people who are knowledgeable about genocide. So I'm interested in your experience, because he knew that I was experienced with the gacaca. I dealt with the perpetrators, survivors, all kinds of witnesses. And then I passed the exam, and then I succeeded. And then I started my work in the archive. So my work consisted in collecting life histories, meaning testimonies of survivors first, and later on we included perpetrators who were willing to testify, and people we call rescuers, people who are from the people who we would call Hutus, who risked their lives to save Tutsis during the genocide, because it's genocide against the Tutsi. That is the proper name, recognized by Rwanda, by UN. And later on, we included people who are knowledgeable of the history of Rwanda, elders, people who were by 1959 were 12 years old, who knew about the Belgian colonial administration, because that's where all started. The conflict, the creation of ethnicities, from the social group to ethnicities, and who know how the ethnic-based politics contributed much to the genocide against the Tutsi. And I was an interviewer, I was an indexer, I was a cataloger, I was archivist, and I did everything. And later on, I worked also on Holocaust testimonies, because I went to Los Angeles to work with the USC, University of Southern California, Shaw Foundation, the Institute of Visual History and Education. And for the first time, I heard about the life history, a testimony of a survivor who was called Peter Hirsch. Peter Hirsch was originally from Ukraine, in a small city called Roja or Roya. Maybe one of you might know about that town. And I indexed almost 2 hours of the testimony, and it marked my life forever. And for that day,
Why? Because it was somehow similar to your feelings or landscape?
I learned 2 things. First of all, because I was considered myself as someone who had suffered, I considered the Rwandans as the most suffered people on this planet. And then when I heard about the Holocaust, that guy Peter Hirsch talking about what happened to him, talking about the importance of shoes during the cold weather, the death march, because I know a lot of keywords, topics about specifically about the Holocaust. And when I learned about that, I thought, how can other people, non-Jewish people, learn about it? Because teaching Holocaust and Jewish suffering during the Holocaust, during the genocide against the Jews, it's not doing service to the Jews, it's doing service to humanity.
Yes.
Because people might think, I noticed that too at the memorial, that many West Africans come, they visit, maybe Australians, Americans, some people visit without visiting. They feel like that it's they passing the memorial, it's a part of the tourism. Dark tourism.
Yes.
But I think people, I don't know if it's our part to communicate better, or it's both parties. They have to learn. They should learn about what happened to humanity, not to the Jews or the Tutsis or Armenians or Bosniaks,
but to the families, to your own.
Yeah, to the humanity. Because if you're not teaching about what happened, it's one part of humanity that you're not revealing to humanity. So you need to teach that so that we draw lessons. Yeah.
Do you feel like in family in your job in Kigali Memorial Site?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I feel like I could have left my job, but there's something magnetic. It's like a magnet that makes you stay there. It's like you want to learn more and to give more, to keep communicating, to learn new ways of communicating what happened to humanity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Możesz mówić po polsku, bo to tylko Małgosi Maniera.
No, that's not a manner, because I am close with you. And then when I close, I want to run the same way.
Po polsku też wykonam to zadanie. Moje nazwisko Krawczyk, tak jak powiedział profesor Śpiewak, przez 5 lat byłem polskim dyplomatą w Bośni, mieszkałem w Sarajewie do lipca ubiegłego roku i temat Srebrenica był w zakresie moich obowiązków zawodowych. Bywałem tam z adnotacjami, pisałem notatki, sprawozdania i to, jak sądzę, jest przyczyną, dla której dzisiaj towarzyszę tutaj pani Amrze Begić, wicedyrektorce Centrum Śpiewak w tym słowie wstępnym, że studia nad Holokaustem, nad ludobójstwem wchodzą teraz w jakby nową jakościową, czy weszły w nową jakościową fazę, gdzie nie tylko historycy zajmują się odtworzeniem chronologii, faktografii wydarzeń, że tak próbują to połączyć w jakiś interdyscyplinarny sposób, głównie z psychologią. Jak może dojść do takiej myśli, że może powstać idea rozwiązania jakiegoś problemu przez anihilację, przez likwidację jakiejś innej grupy, z którą się sąsiaduje, czy jest w konflikcie. I to już jest proces, który trwa jakiś czas i w tym momencie, w 1995 roku pojawia się Srebrenica. Tutaj oczywiście jest najlepszą osobą do powiedzenia, co się stało w Srebrenicy, będzie za chwilę pani Amra Begić, ale ja tu powiem jedno zdanie. W ciągu 4 dni rozstrzelano 8000 osób. I to nie są żadne jakieś peryferie świata, nie. W Bośni i Hercegowinie istnieje takie powiedzenie: my żyjemy 500 km od Wiednia. Dla pokazania, że jesteśmy przecież w centrum Europy. Mnie też się pytają, a Warszawa ile kilometrów od Wiednia jest? Jak powiem 560, to nawet patrzą na mnie z taką satysfakcją, że jesteśmy bardziej oddaleni. Ja nie wiem, czy akurat Wiedeń jest centrum Europy, ale takie powiedzenie jest. I nagle 500 km od Wiednia może powstać takie napięcie między grupami społecznymi, że decyduje się w jednym mieście rozstrzelać 8000 osób. Świat był zszokowany, bo to się odbywało jakby przed oczyma ludźmi, nawet przed oczyma cywilizacji światowej, w taki sposób, że co prawda z kilkudniowym opóźnieniem, ale jednak były zdjęcia z satelit amerykańskich latających nad całą Europą, gdzie po cieniu można było poznać, że stoją grupki ludzi i zdjęcie zrobione za 3 minuty, te grupki ludzi leżą. Znaczy na naszych oczach zostało rozstrzelane. Ja, przepraszam, że tak powiem, ale powiedzmy sobie tak powoli wewnętrznie, rozstrzelać 8000 przez 4 dni. To jest po prostu ciężka fizyczna praca. Jest notabene zresztą zeznanie jednego z uczestników, który tak zeznał trochę beznamiętnie, że jak rozstrzelali 1200 osób i powiedzieli, przyszli im jacyś dowódcy i powiedzieli, że trzeba strzelać 500, to oni powiedzieli, że ich już bolą ręce, że już nie mają siły i się zbuntowali. No to wtedy powiedziano, no dobrze, to jakiś inny zespół będzie dalej rozstrzygał. To jest coś, co zszokowało świat. Świat jest w zasadzie zszokowany. Jak do tego doszło? Co się stało? Kim są sprawcy? Na jakiej podstawie? To był 95 rok. W zasadzie, jak słyszę, że u nas były problemy typu Balcerowicz musi odejść, to są śmieszne problemy. W gruncie rzeczy przed tym, z czym byli skonfrontowani ludzie w Srebrenicy. Srebrenica, to co się stało w Srebrenicy, jest takim refleksja nad tym, podsumowanie tego, jest także wkładem w pewne europejskie myślenie właśnie o sprawach ludobójstwa i o sprawach morderstw, a także techniki, na przykład największe dotąd badania genetycznego porównywania kości z osobami żyjącymi z rodzin zostały dokonane po Srebrenicy i stąd także w dziedzinie rozwoju nauk medycznych, co strasznie brzmi, Srebrenica się do tego przyczyniła. Wielkie też pytanie, drugi jakby obszar, o którym chcę też poprosić, już oddaję mikrofon pani Amrze. Jest problem, co z tym ma dzisiaj zrobić społeczeństwo, co z tym ma dzisiaj zrobić państwo, Bośnia i Hercegowina. W 2003 roku, a więc całkiem niedawno, zostało zbudowane Centrum Pamięci, Memoriał, potocznie się mówi, pod Ocalały. To jest taka wioska 5 czy 8 kilometrów od Srebrenicy, którą wybrano jako miejsce symboliczne. To była pewna umowność. Na samym początku chciano w Kradaniu, zdaje się, zbudować, to jest 15 kilometrów dalej, bo to też jest w ogóle ciekawe, że jako to miejsce upamiętnienia trzeba było wybrać pewne symboliczne miejsce. Ono mogło być 5 kilometrów obok. I to jest ciekawe.
Excuse me, may I explain that part?
Tak.
Yes, I do. Just a
one
short.
phrase and I move microphone to you. Więc to jest w ogóle to bardzo ciekawe pytanie. Jak kreować, jak tworzyć, jakie pytania stawiać w tak konkretnej sytuacji. Wszystko, co powiem ja tutaj więcej, byłoby nie na miejscu w sytuacji, kiedy jest obok mnie pani Amra Begić.
Yeah, anyway, thank you for this introduction of Srebrenica and what happened there. Yes, I'm coming from the Srebrenica Memorial Center, and what I wanted to explain about the place where the memorial is now. It is not like just symbolic, it is symbolic, but the reason why we have that memorial at that certain place is because genocide started there. And it started there because United Nations headquarters was just in that place, you know. So when people on July 11th morning, when Srebrenica fought under the control of the Bosnian Serbs military forces, even that just night before we were promised that it is not going to happen, that Karaman's commander of the Dutch battalion number 3 in Srebrenica asked refugees to go back to 10 places because that night before everybody from Srebrenica they escaped to Potocari because they wanted to stay closer to the base, you know. They believed to the United Nations forces, they believed that those are going to do something to protect us. Same like in Rwanda, I would say, even that in that time we didn't know nothing about Rwanda because we didn't have even electricians, you know, we couldn't hear the news or something like that. So that morning on July 11th, the only thing that we could do is to decide, to make decision how to survive actually. So most of the population from Srebrenica, mostly women, kids, old people, or people with mental or physical problems, they were running back to Potocari, they were running back to the headquarters of the United Nations. They believe that the gates are going to be open, that they are going to be welcomed there, and that they are going to be safe. The other group of the people that they were escaping Srebrenica actually, were mostly men between 20 or actually 16 to 60 years old. You know, they couldn't believe anymore to the United Nations that morning on July 11th, and they decided to try to reach free territory by foot. It was something that we named as a March of Death, because more than 6,000 didn't survive on their way in the next 100 kilometers. I'm not talking about huge territory, I'm talking just about 100 kilometers, but most of them, they didn't survive. Anyway, in Potocari, 30,000 refugees was coming, you know, but just about 6,000 sheltered to the base. Then United Nations received the order by the Bosnian Serbs military forces that they need to stop it. So my family was there. I was already in Tuzla because my father, on 11th of April 1992, my father thought that he has to send us to my aunt to the bigger place actually. And he promised that we are going to see each other like in 10-15 days just to see how the situation is going to go on actually. But just on 17th of April, Srebrenica was for the first time, or on 1992, already under the siege, so we were stuck. There was no way out of Srebrenica or way to come back to Srebrenica. So I was in Tuzla, but all my family, my sister, my father, my parents, my cousins, my best friend, they were in Srebrenica. So that morning, my parents and my sister, they decided to go to the base, you know. My father used to work as a first war interpreter in Srebrenica, so he was working for the Doctors Without Borders, so he went to the base without any problem. But when he asked if he can take his family with him, he was told, no, you can stay, but not two of them. So he didn't want to leave my sister and my mom, so he just went back. But 6,000 people was there in the base. Just few hours after ethnical cleansing started in Potocka. They started to separate men from the women, taking the men just across of the headquarters. There is a house, we named that as a white house, just because the walls are white, not because it is white one, for real, because that was execution place in Potocka. So there they took, according to the reports from the Dutch, but 3 peacekeepers, you know, they took about 400 men and they killed them in the most horrible way by cutting the parts of the bodies, and in the end they were cutting their heads, throwing them to the track and driving with the track in between the refugees, you know. So that was the way to send a message, this is what is going to happen if you try to escape, if you try to help to someone or to yourself, you know. So mostly people were trying to stay as quiet as it was possible, you know. So anyway, and ethnical cleansing started on July 11th, you know. The Dutch soldiers, they made a live wall there on the road, they stopped the refugees. The Bosnian Serb soldiers supported supported by the paramilitary forces from Serbia. They were separating the men, part of them taking to the White House, most of them still keeping on the field, and that hardest night was that night in between July 11th and July 12th. You know, so next morning, finally, refugees, they received the information that the buses and trucks coming, and that they are going to transport all of them nearby the Free Territory. I asked my mother what she was thinking in that moment. She said, we didn't believe. We didn't believe, but once when the trucks and buses around 12 o'clock were there, she says, it was hard to believe that they are going to take us to the Free Territory, you know, because they saw executions, they saw that the women were dying there. Out of the number of the genocide victims, 57 women died in Srebrenica, you know. Many of them were raped, one of them was baby, you know, so it was hard to believe, but anyway, the buses and trucks were there in a line, and then the families, the refugees were told to go to the right direction of the buses, you know. So the problem was that each bus or truck had several, and it was just like 5 meters from the peacekeepers, United Nations, you know. They were looking at everything. That is why I said that Memorial Center is not there just from symbolic reason, you know. The reason was that it started there. So each bus and truck had several very armed soldiers, Bosnian Serb soldiers, who were waiting for the refugees. And if you were a man between 16 and 90, my grandpa was 78, you would be separated. They were explaining that like we are giving priority to the women and kids. But last words on July 12, 1995, my father it was turned on my family. My mother, they were last in the bus. My mother was there, and my sister, and then the school friend of my sister came to my father and he asked him, Mr. where are you going? The last words of my father were, everything is over now. He knew. So all the men who were trying to find a safe place in the headquarters were separated. On July 13th at the afternoon, the ethnical cleansing outside of the base was finished. Then they gave the orders to the Dutch again to send to send those refugees that they were keeping them inside there to send them out. So the Dutch, they made a corridor through the base, and the United Nations actually sent them straight into the hands of the Bosnian Serbs military forces. You know, so all men, approximately 500 out of this group, were separated, and even one didn't survive. Even that it was clear that they are going to kill them. Even that in one moment they were still keeping refugees inside there. The Dutch, they were trying to make a list of the men in this age that they could become victims, you know. So they were at the number 239 names on the list, you know. They received this order to send them out. So they sent also those 239, and even one didn't survive. So the case of Srebrenica on the court in Holland is the first case at some international court that actually someone won against United Nations and against the country. It was not satisfaction because the United Nations and Holland, they took just 10% responsibility for that. What happened to those who were in the base, not who were separated in the base, outside of the base, you know. But satisfaction is that through this trial, actually, thousands of the people heard what happened in Srebrenica under the United Nations flag. So after they separated them, they took them to one of the schools. Then the mayor of that school, of that place where the school was, he said, "I don't want mass killings to go on the territory under my control." Not because he wanted to save someone. He just didn't want to be responsible anymore, because at that moment already more than 1,300 were killed. They were cached in the mountains and they were killed at the territory of that municipality. So they transported them immediately to the execution places at the territory of the municipality Zvornik, which is about 50 kilometers far from Srebrenica. And there my father died by the bullet straight to the head. That was the most painful thing after 1995 for me, because I'm working at the Memorial Center, dealing with that every day. So immediately I knew that my father actually survived slaughtering, because the Bosnian soldiers, they slaughtered them, then they were checking on if there's still someone alive, and if they found someone, they finished with that one by bullet straight to the head. You know, so this, you know, the chance to say goodbye, the chance to say the last words is the biggest problem. But also, we knew a few months before genocide that something bad is going to happen. We had a communication problem, you know. We communicated by Red Cross messages, you know, and suddenly the Red Cross messages were not passing to Tuzla anymore. So the last one that I received was written by my father at the beginning of April 1995. I received that 2.5 months after genocide, and this was kind of the goodbye. But actually he wrote about the future plans, what we are going to do when we see each other, or giving me instructions how to deal with the problems and to stay strong and things like that. And can you imagine reading that? About the things that he was planning, and you know that it will never happen. But anyway, I learned a lot, same of the others from actually in 2005, I was invited to start to work, almost from the very beginning of the Memorial Center, to work at the Memorial Center. And my first practice was actually at the Westerbork camp. It's a Holocaust museum in Holland. I don't know if you know about that place. Then we visited also Auschwitz, and unfortunately, because of the horrible things I said, but also I started to appreciate that I still have a mother, that I still have a sister. that I still have a family, you know, because facing with the other reality, then actually it was pushing me to stay stronger, to understand that it could be even worse. Then through my work I learned about Rwanda and Cambodia and the other places, and I think that our stories, it's just one story on the end.
And it keeps you stronger.
Yes.
When you are close,
Yes,
it keeps
and
you stronger.
Srebrenicy is maybe
Paradoxically.
just a moment when you think, yeah, it was in the middle of the Europe, in the middle of on the end of the 20th century, and it makes us to think that it can happen everywhere and to anyone. So our prayer in the Memorial Center, the motto of the Memorial Center is, do not let this happen nowhere and to anyone again. But the problems that we have now, Ambassador probably know that it's denial. The problem is that we have denial of the genocide. The problem is that the war criminals are still very free. One is living just 10 meters from my house. I have to look at him every day. The man who separated my father, I see him on the street like at least 2 times a week. The problem is that prosecutions are going on just against the higher level. Like the former president of Republika Srpska in Bosnia and Hercegovina was, the verdict against him was like guilty for the genocide. He got life sentence, you know. But what with the smaller one, with the one that they actually physically committed that, we have to look at them. And when they deny the crimes, it's like they're laughing to our faces, you know. So that's maybe a reason also why we decided to go back to Srebrenica, why we decided to try to rebuild our lives. It's not easy. It's not easy at all, but we are going on.
I have a question too. I have to ask you that when you think about the Holocaust denials, yeah, there's always this somewhere gossip, strange idea. There is no bodies. There is no bodies. Of course, there were Holocaust by bullets, but in general, there is no bodies. There were gas chambers, so you cannot recognize. There are only ruins. In your case, everything is about an evidence and about material evidence. And how Ambassador Kravchenko told, even it influences the physical anthropology to develop. So the evidences are there, alike there. And how it's going on with the memorial site, in which you can find the material evidence in the moment when you have still war criminals walking around, and it's like that the human remains becomes a kind of how to call it, trigger, a social trigger in that situation, because this is something you cannot deny.
Yeah, thank you for that question. If I'm Bosnian Serb war criminal, I would tell you, yeah, they are bringing the skeletons from everywhere. Like Germans, for example, during one of the identification process of the skeletons found nearby Srebrenica, they were Srebrenica genocide victims there, but also one German soldier from the Second World War. So that was like, okay, you are bringing the corpse 100 years old, or you are bringing that from Sarajevo, you know. I wish if we have the General Director of the ICP, International Commission on Identification in here. She works not just with Bosnia, also Rwanda and Cambodia, and she's really trying to make a whole system on it, you know. So she will tell you more about this, you know. So even that we have an Institute of Missing Person with all the documents, it's not that I just would go there to say my father is missing. You know, I needed to prove that by the documentation, the name of my father, that I was his daughter, everything, you know. So after Institute, we have also International Commission on Identification. You know, we can't just like say, yes, those are the bones of my father. You know, we have like a data with our blood and his, I don't know how DNA code, you know, to match, you know, like at least 99.94%, you know. So when we match that, you know, just then we can be sure about it. But they don't want to hear about that. The deniers, you know. So it's.
Did you recognize
but
your
also
father?
we can talk now still about the recent history. Again, I'm going back to the festival camp. For the 40 years there, they were not able to talk about 102,000 Jews who were transported from the festival camp to the Auschwitz or Bergen-Belsen, I believe. I think, if I remember. So they were not able to talk about that. Then they got they were allowed to start to construct the barracks, you know, and to work more on this issue, you know. So now next year it is going to be 25 years, so we can still talk about the recent history, and still we can hope that the things are going to change in the right way.
The last question from me I have to ask, I mean, did you recognize your father or grandfather? No,
Yes,
I have to.
my
This
father
is the
was-
most important, Paweł.
Yeah,
It's your
there's a
family
story
promise.
behind that, but I'm not going to take more time from all of you. And I found my father, actually after they killed them, they were trying to hide the crimes. So they drove them to the primary locations of the mass graves. Then when they realized that there are satellite recordings, you know, from the Americans, you know, of those locations, they replaced them because they realized that we are going to have a hunt. That we are going to have a physical proof of that what happened. So they replaced them from the primary to the secondary one. Unfortunately, my father was replaced also to the third one, you know. So we found him in 2008. We buried him in 2009. But unfortunately, my grandpa, we buried just 55% of his skeleton. The process from the first example of his skeleton that we found until we buried him, it took like 4 years. So 2007, 2011, when my mother decided to bury him because she just wanted to know where he's going to be buried, her father, you know. And we found those 55% in 4 different mass graves from 6 different pieces. His scalp was totally destroyed, and we are still looking for the 45. But I know the mothers that they found just one bone, and they were happy because, believe it or not.
Before we go to Yann, I have to ask you, did you recognize your family? Did you find bones of your family?
Only my father and my younger brother. Yeah, 2 people. But you know, it's not in an extended family. It's not easy. You know, you have to assume when you have a mass grave in the south of the country, then you know that your family, your extended family, your cousins, aunties lived there, and the exhumation concerns like more than 5,000 people. So you assume that they are among those 1,000 people. And then you go there together with others, survivors, and then you give them dignity.
Gospodzia Amra Begić. To niełatwo jest zabierać głos po takim bliżej. Niełatwo jest zabierać głos po tak emocjonalnej, wzruszającej wypowiedzi. A proszę mi wierzyć, ja byłem w tej największej, tak zwanej specjalnej zbudowanej lodówce koło Turcji, gdzie leżą, że dobrze pamiętam, 30 kilka, 40 kilka zidentyfikowanych kości, które należą do 12 000 osób, ale jest problem i nie sposób tego złożyć razem. To są straszne rzeczy. Wiem, że proszono nawet w pewnym momencie teologów muzułmańskich, od kiedy można uznać to, o czym mówiła tutaj pani Amra, od kiedy można uznać, kiedy można pochować człowieka. I pierwsza reakcja była, że jak 70% kręgosłupa jest, to można uznać, że chowamy człowieka. I wycofano się, znaczy teolodzy później się wycofali z tego pod taką olbrzymią presją nawet symbolicznie, jeżeli znajdziemy, ponieważ poszły bardzo dobre możliwości identyfikacji, jeżeli jedną kość palca znajdziemy od jakiegoś człowieka i tylko to i nic więcej, to też dajcie nam pochować naszego kuzyna, chociażby w postaci tej kości palcowej, więc konfrontując taką relację, niełatwo jest być historykiem czy urzędnikiem i dalej funkcjonować, ale dwie rzeczy chciałem tylko powiedzieć. Proszę pamiętać, że jest to rzecz zupełnie współczesna. Znaczy ona się stała w 1995 roku, ostatni z dużych procesów dowódcy wojewódzkich generała Begicza, dopiero w roku 2017, no więc to jest zupełnie niedaleko. A druga rzecz, że tutaj używamy angielskiego słowa, ale też to zaprzeczenie czy negacjonizm możemy przetłumaczyć na język polski. Myślę, że ważne jest, żeby precyzyjnie zrozumieć, czego zaprzeczają Serbowie. Serbowie przyznali się do popełnienia tej zbrodni, natomiast nie chcą się przyznać, że to było ludobójstwo. Mówią, że to była zbrodnia wojenna. Generał Begić na procesie mówił, dobrze byłem dowódcą, to poczułam się do tego, że moi żołnierze byli niesubordynowani, a jak weszli do muzułmańskiego miasta, byli, tak jak mówił Begić, tak, byli pełni negatywnych emocji do muzułmanów, a ja ich nie potrafiłem dopilnować, ale to jest zbrodnia wojenna. Toczy się spór, którego ja Państwu staram się relacjonować, ale do końca nie rozumiem, co jest zbrodnią wojenną, czy nie. Ja pozwoliłem sobie nawet, nie wiem, czy mądrze, czy nie, ale zobaczyć czas publicznie powiedzieć, że myślę, że człowiekowi przyprowadzanemu na drugie, rozstrzeliwanemu jest myślę, rzeczy wszystko jedno, czy jest rozstrzeliwany w ramach zbrodni wojennej, czy w ramach ludobójstwa. Ale coś takiego jest w świecie, jeśli my chcemy się tym zajmować jakoś takim pozdnym, na ile się da szkiełkiem mędrca, musimy o tym pamiętać. I pamiętajmy tylko też szerzej, na przykład Rosjanie nie chcą uznać, Rosjanie mówią podobnie, Katyń tak, ale Katyń to nie było ludobójstwo, to było tylko 22 przypadki nawet kryminalnego morderstwa, ale nie ludobójstwo. Także w tej chwili w świecie, to trzeba być świadomym, jest taka wielka dyskusja o ludobójstwie i następuje też pewna inflacja tego pojęcia. Serbowie usiłują w tej polemice być atakujący i mówią, no ale nas też mordowano, to było też ludobójstwo narodu serbskiego, bo tutaj rozstrzelano 40 osób, tutaj 20. Także to tak tytułem takiego komentarza tego człowieka, który musi być historykiem i urzędnikiem, ale naprawdę proszę mnie wejście do takiej wielkiej lodówki, gdzie leżą kości, które nie sposób poskładać, jest wrażeniem, które zostaje na całe życie. I jeszcze, przepraszam, o jednym dylemacie pozwolę sobie powiedzieć. Nazywa się Drażen Erdmanowicz, you know. Tak. To był jeden z żołnierzy z tej grupy rozstrzeliwującej, który stanął przed Trybunałem w Hadze, poszedł na współpracę z sądem, bardzo opisywał to wszystko skrupulatnie i zadano nawet pytanie, a jak Pan ocenia, ile osób Pan zabił, Pan konkretnie, indywidualnie, ile zabił? Mówi, no to trudno powiedzieć, ale ja tak myślę, że 170 zabiłem. A proszę wyobrazić sobie, jaką karę więzienia dostał za to. 5 lat więzienia. Odbył ją w Norwegii i już w tej chwili jest zresztą norweska służba bezpieczeństwa załatwiła mu gdzieś ukrycie w Europie. świecie, ja próbowałem trochę dociec, dlaczego. I powiedziano mi, no on zgodził się wobec historii, wobec całego świata godzinę mówić w sądzie, przed kamerami telewizyjnymi, przed kamerą filmową. W gruncie rzeczy mówią Bośniacy nawet, ja nie wiem co pani Amra sądzi, nawet nie wiem czy ja mam prawo moralne pytać o tak trudne pytanie i zadać. No w sumie warto jeden człowiek, jeden chłystek niech sobie pójdzie po 5 latach i gdzieś tam żyje z tą świadomością. Notabene dowódca korpusu, który dowodził na wyższym szczeblu z Srebrenicą, żyje paradoksalnie niedaleko nas, niedaleko stąd, mianowicie w więzieniu w Piotrkowie Trybunalskim jest, ponieważ został skazany chyba na 34 lata więzienia i miał odbywać karę więzienia w Wielkiej Brytanii i po tym jak próbowali więźniowie muzułmańscy poderżnąć gardło na korytarzu, rząd Wielkiej Brytanii zwrócił się do Międzynarodowego Trybunału Sprawiedliwości, a ten do nas, że nie jest w stanie mu zapewnić bezpieczeństwa, że wszędzie, w każdym więzieniu brytyjskim są muzułmanie. No i my zgodziliśmy się go. To chyba, myślę, że ja nie oceniam tego w żaden sposób moralnie. W każdym razie przebywa w więzieniu w Piotrkowie Trybunalskim. Ale ja chciałem jeszcze...
Just a second. Because yes, we are going to go back to Marin. Yes.
To ja powiem może o panu Marinie, którego chciałem teraz też zadać pytanie, chociaż go nie ma, ale ja będę o nim mówił, to nie musi nawet w tym uczestniczyć, bo to jest, mówił o tym profesor Śpiewak, bardzo niezwykła i unikatowa sytuacja. On miał 6 lat, to oczywiście jest, był w tym momencie małym dzieckiem, ale to jest cała jego historia rodzinna. On to żył tym, a poza tym, no to coś się też pamięta, jeżeli na twoich oczach mordują rodziców, braci. I to jest książka, która jest także tłumaczona na wiele języków, o ile dobrze pamiętam tytuł, ostatni człowiek wspomnienia dziecka. I to też jest w takiej światowej literaturze, nie wiem jak powiedzieć, to jest kryminologiczna czy wiktymologiczna o ludobójstwie pewien fenomen. Dlatego czeka właśnie, do niego chciałem sformułować to pytanie, prośba o jego świadectwo. Marin, it's possible. The floor is yours. Please tell us your history, your personal history. I said a few words about your books.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm really appreciate it. First, let me ask you questions before I do my presentations. How many of you actually know where Cambodia is? Raise your hand. If you don't know, that's fine. If you don't know, that's fine. Okay, that's good. Okay.
Not exactly.
It's great. Okay, so Cambodia is located near Vietnam and border to Thailand and Laos. Now, before I do presentations, I always ask people to close your eyes and imagine. Okay, go ahead and close your eyes. Close your eyes. And I will say, just imagine that right now you have family members. Imagine that you have a car, you have a job. Imagine that you have all the possessions with you. And you have professions. About your professions, you love it, you love your families. You love everything about what you have right now. Just go ahead and open your eyes. Thank you. And imagine this. What you just have,
the Khmerov evacuate you. Just imagine that you're in Warsaw right now. And imagine that they evacuate every one of you from Warsaw. Just imagine that, to the countryside. And they confiscate everything, every possessions that you have. That had happened in Cambodia. That was the situations in Cambodia. To start with my story is that according to the history books and the newspaper account, they said that the Khmer Rouge captured Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, in 1975. And they ruled the country until 1979, which is about 3 years and 8 months. However, I have no recollections of those dates and times. I was so little. All I remember was day and night, rain and shine. I did not even remember my own age until now. When the Khmer took over Cambodia, they evacuated people from the city to the countryside, and they turned the country into a one of utopia rules that everybody is the same, which means they confiscate all the cooking pots, cooking pots and pans, all the jewelry. They abolish religions, schools. They abolish money, no market. It's nothing. It's nothing. So it is very difficult to understand this complex of genocides that they are able to evacuate people, the whole city and the whole country, to live in a rural area. And sadly, my family was also in that situation. I had a family of the total family members that I have is 5. 5 people lived in my family. It's my mother, my father, my younger brother, my older sister, and I. And when the Khmer Rouge evacuated my families to the countryside, my younger brother died from starvation. And then they separated my older sister to live in the children's camp. And I am the only person who lived with my mother and my father. But later on, they started to invite my father. I use the word invited clearly. It was a very formal invitation by the soldiers. They invited him to work to build a water canal. It's a project. So I did not cry. I did not do anything. It's just a normal. Okay. But my mother, I believe that she knows what had happened. So she was worried. She was so concerned. She was so sad. But I had no idea. I was about approximately 5 years old. And I was starving. I was starving kids. So after that, after they take my father away, invited him to build water canals. And my mother was sick, and she died in the hospital. So I am the only person to survive in my entire family. But from time to time, I was moved from one place to another. I lived with different groups of people. And it just being survived by myself as about 5 years old, and I saw so many horrific things that people could not imagine. I was forced to watch the Khmer Rouge kill the prisoner in front of me, like about 10 meters away. Because the prisoner was trying to escape from the prison, and the prisoner slept. Just like, it's about less than 10 meters away from me, which is I could see his eye, I could see. I almost could hear his breathing. And they chained him in, they chained his ankle, his wrist, and tied the back of the bamboo post. It's bigger than that. It's about this side. And he sat next to me. But he was able to escape. Two prisoners was able to escape with chain locked, everything. And in the morning, when the Khmer Rouge woke up, they could not see the prisoner. And they looked around for, to all of us. I mean, to the people who live around the area. It was like, who helped them escape? And everybody's denied. Nobody knows how they could escape from that, And not just that, the prisoner stole the prison guard's horse. That was amazing. That was, I don't know, until right now, I could not even understand how he could escape. Two prisoners could escape, but later on, he got caught and dragged by the horse. And the Khmer Rouge trying to demonstrate to us that this is what had happened if you escaped. So we had to stand and look at how they interrogate those two prisoners. And they used the knife to poke on his chest and then cut on his throat. And we had to watch. They forced us to watch how they killed the people. So that was the experience that I had. More than that, within 4 years, almost 4 years living in the Khmer Rouge region, and I was all over the place. I did not know where I was at. I had no idea. I was different groups. They forced me to a different labor camp, but I was helped by other adult people, which means I don't have to work. If the Khmer Rouge measured the land 1 meter to dig to build a water canal, I was so small. I was like a kid. So they helped me to finish the job. But later on, I was had a new friend. That new friend, he's the son of the Khmer Rouge commander, or the Khmer Rouge leader. He's about 6 or 7 years old, or was about 8 years old, because about 3 years later. And he always gave me food. He came to play with me. Again, I live in different places all the time. I cannot remember all the pieces. It's just too difficult for me to remember that. And he gave me food. He taught me how to play hopscotch, hopscotch games. He taught me that, how to play. And by playing with the Khmer Rouge commander, or the chief, I was able to recognize my other Khmer Rouge villagers, who live in the village, but they are Khmer Rouge. They acknowledge me as one of them. So one of the girls, they come to perform at the place where I live. They come to perform the Khmer Rouge revolution songs, which means they practice and they dance. And then they invited me, they called me, hey Marin, come over. Well, they did not know my names, but by now, hey kids, come on, come to on the stage. And they taught me how to perform the Khmer Rouge revolution dance. And I was stiff. At first, I did not remember, what to do or how to walk. But they taught me. They put the rifle on my shoulder, the play rifle, the wooden rifle that made from from wood. And they put on my shoulder. They puff my chest out to make me look brave and strong. And they also called Bull, who's my friends, to also practice the performance as well. At first I was stiff and unable to coordinate my performance. But they taught me very well. Later on, I was able to perform in coordinated way. One of the ladies that just walk, just follow me, and in a coordinated ways. And then after that, we start to sing a song. We call it, which means we are the children of Angka, the organization. We love the organization limitless. And I had lots of fun. It was so joyful as a kid. I was enjoying that events, practicing, singing, even I'm not practicing, on the stage. It's just, we are the children of Angka. So I remember that song until now. And then at the end of the songs, well, one time I performed in front of the soldiers, the Khmer soldiers. We sing the song, and then at the end of the song, we point the rifles up. We say, we must kill all the enemies in our country. Kill, kill, kill. So this is part of the performance. But as kids, I did not know what the word enemies actually really meant. I had no idea. So one time, one of the Khmerov asked me to collect the firewood. I was about, I think 7 years old at the time, collect the firewood, and I had no idea how to collect the firewood and all this stuff. Just one of the Khmerovs in who works in the communal cafeteria, which is cooking for food for the people. They said, just go across the river, walk across the railroad bridge, to the other side of the river, you will find lots of firewood. So I did what I was told. At first, that's no problem, I walk back and forth. Of course, it is challenging walking on the railroad bridge. But there's one time I continued to challenge myself to walk further and further away from the river and the railroad bridge to collect the firewood. Then I noticed that the village was empty and all the houses were burned and completely burned, and only a few posts, house posts that were really standing. It was so quiet, there was no cats or dogs running around. And then I continued to walk, trying to collect the firewood. And there's lots of firewood. And all of a sudden, I saw mass graves with scattered bones all over places. And the sharp waves, so fair, shocking from my spine all the way to my brain. Then I started to scream, shout. I said, come on, which means ghost or dead body. I said, come on, please help me, please help me. So I ran back to the river, and I fell so many times. I did not feel any pain. I just kept running and running back, and I shout for help. But nobody could hear me. I just kept running and running. So that was the times that I realized what is the word enemies, and I started questioning myself. Why do they tell me how to kill the enemy? What is enemy? And I started questioning, who's an enemy? Was my father, my mother, and I the enemy? Was the people that I saw killing in the prison, were they the enemy? Was the people who worked in the labor camps, were they the enemies? Or the people that I saw, with hand ties to the back, almost every day I saw people with the hand ties to the back. Were they the enemies? Was I the enemies? So I asked questions without any answer. So it's just a challenge for me, because with that, before that had happened, I was caught by the Khmer soldiers stealing grains of rice. Was the Khmer who caught me stealing grains of rice, and he attempted to kill me by drowning me in the water canal. Was I the enemy? So as a child, at 5 years old, I experienced persecutions and the threat of executions many times. But for some reason, my rebellious or the challenges that I had that kept me alive. And also, I was saved by the Khmer Rouge, which I was one time almost died. So, and I asked questions, why one Khmer Rouge consider other peoples as an enemy, and why the other save me? So these are the questions that I cannot answer at this time. It's just difficult. I don't know what's the answer is or how to answer the questions. However, to answer about the preservations, I have no idea how to preserve these horrific records of genocide. So I ended up writing a book that many of my friends, American friends, or any people who ask me questions when I go to the bar, to the clubs, they start to ask me this question: where are you from? I never tell them where I came from. I said, you guess? To see if they know where I come from. It's right. It's not about insulting the knowledge of that individual. It's about educating another person. For me, it's part of the fun, So maybe the Philippines, maybe Hawaii, Cuba, whatever the answer is. I said, you wear clothes or it's almost there. Then I tell them, I came from Cambodia. You know where Cambodia is? If you know, it's fine. If not, I start to educate the person. I said, oh, it's your family living in the United States with you. I said, no. Oh, so then he or she assumed that, oh, your family must be living in Cambodia. I said, no, I don't have any family members. What do you mean by that? Well, I was an orphan. My family's died in the war. And I'm the only person survived. So the person started to ask the question again, how did you survive? And I said, I cannot tell you in one sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences, or 20 sentences, because my life is so complicated, very complicated to be as a survivor, as an orphan child, coming to America. I cannot even explain how difficult it is and how challenging it is for me to be alive today. So that's why I started to write a book, which is part of the reservation on the first eyewitness accounts that I had. So that book is about 400 pages long. I tell every detail that I survived as a child. So I cannot just, like I told you, when I have conversations with friends, I just tell a little detail. I cannot tell everything. Yes. I'd rather leave that so that you can ask questions. Yes.
Thank you very, very much, Marin. I just want to add one thing. Marin, you are a real survivor, but you are also very strong. You have a strong will, but also very strong body. He is very sportive, he's extremely active, he's running, he's playing almost professionally volleyball, beach volleyball. And physical activity for Marin is very important. So also from the psychological point of view, yes, you have to be very close and integrated with your own body. And we are going tomorrow to Forum Memoriału in Stutthof, a former concentration camp in Stutowo. Stutowo is a little town by the sea. And Marin, what he did? He checked on the map, because he is a survivor, always thinking very clearly. He checked that he's very close to the sea. So he took the volleyball with him, and we are going to practice, right? And this is also about staying on the bright side of the light. And I hope, I know that you also have an idea in the very upcoming future to write your own memories. So, I mean, we are going to support you as much as we can, and I hope that every of us will be very, very welcome to read your book and also to read, Marin, your book. We have one. So we are going to share with anybody who would like to. And now we would like to give a voice to you. No, it's in English. But maybe, who knows, maybe the Jewish Historical Director will read it. He already did, and maybe he will be a decision that we're going maybe to translate it to Polish and edit it by a Jewish Historical Institute. And this is also a very good idea, I think, because this is prevention as well. This is this multi-directional thing. So, next book, your master thesis about the Holocaust.
Yes.
We have a lot of work in Jewish Historical Institute, and now we would like to give you for generation. Yes, a work for generation. Yes. There is questions. Pytania dla Państwa.
Jeszcze 2 zdania, tylko chciałem dopowiedzieć. Bardzo trudno jest zabierać głos, cokolwiek mówić po tym, co przed chwilą słyszeliśmy, ale rzeczywiście to mieliśmy do czynienia z kilkoma przypadkami. Co robi ideologia zbrodnicza, obłąkana, jak można dojść do takiej ideologii? Pewnie wszyscy pamiętamy to, że przywódcami Czerwonych Khmerów, to co się stało w Kambodży, to organizowała grupa absolwentów Sorbony. Przepraszam, że tak powiem naprawdę tak prymitywnie, kąśliwie, to było twórcze rozumienie marksizmu. Oni przeformowali walkę klasową z całymi konsekwencjami w ten sposób, że po prostu zabije się tych, którzy są po drugiej stronie, nominowali ci, to w miastach to są burżuazja, ci co na wsi to proletariat. Wszystko to się oderwało od jakiejkolwiek rzeczywistości, ale to miało konsekwencje później, także słyszeliśmy, więc myślę, że sens takich spotkań, ja głęboko wierzę, że to jest pierwsze z tych takiej pracy, że należy krzyczeć bardzo głośno, zwracać uwagę na to niebezpieczeństwo, które jest w ideologii. Im więcej mówimy, tym mniejsza szansa, że ktoś może znowu wymyśleć taką obłędną ideologię. Jak mówiła pani Małgorzata, jutro w Stutthoфе podczas tej konferencji właśnie będzie się rozmawiało o sposobie upamiętniania, sposobie
oddajemy pytania.
Czy ja będę z mikrofonem?
Ale nie, chyba nie z tym, bo chyba tego się nie da. Profesorze, chyba
Nie,
musimy mieć
będzie-
ruchome.
Nie. Będziemy prosili, żeby podchodzić
To
raczej.
jest bardzo
Dobra, ale rasa jest długa, więc rasa od razu.
No, Paweł, nie, Paweł.
Chodź, spokój.
Nie,
Tak,
Paweł.
mogło się uspokójć.
Paweł, już nie
Dzień dobry Państwu i chciałam coś powiedzieć za Wasze pytanie. Przede wszystkim bardzo dziękuję Instytutowi Żydowskiemu ŻIH-owi i osobiście zarówno dyrektorowi, jak i Pani Małgorzacie oraz Panu ambasadorowi, że zorganizowali to absolutnie niezwykłe spotkanie. Bardzo też dziękuję, że jednak wszyscy goście zgodzili się przyjechać z tak daleka i poczynili tyle trudu, żeby się spotkać. Nie będę mówiła, że z każdym z Państwa, ale traktuję to bardzo osobiście, że też ze mną. Ja przynajmniej jestem w tej dobrej sytuacji, że czytam po polsku. W Polsce jest niezwykła osoba, która się nazywa Wojciech Topman. I Wojciech Topman w sumie napisał takie książki, tak niezwykłe książki, poczynając od Srebrenicy, jakbyś Hanik zjadła. To jest przerażająca książka, żeby każdy z nas, czytelników, mógł zrozumieć w ogóle co się stało, chociaż to jest nie do pojęcia, ale jak ludzie później z tym żyją. To samo, tak samo napisał książkę o ludobójstwie w Rwandzie. I teraz ostatnio ukazała się książka Wojciecha Topmana, która jest poświęcona Kambodży. Piannia kogutów i płacz psów, która też jest absolutnie, nie da się tej książki czytać, bo każde zdanie po prostu, tak, człowiek nie jest tego w stanie po prostu przeczytać, a z drugiej strony jest tak dobrze napisane, że chce się czytać. To, co dzisiaj usłyszeliśmy, jest to przekaz bezpośredni i tutaj wszystkich Was widzimy, jak wyglądacie, co Wy przeszliście i tak dalej. I dlatego to jest bardzo wzruszające. Większość z nas zna historię dziadków, historię w niektórych przypadkach jeszcze ojców i opowieści z Katynia polskiego i opowieści z Syberii reżimu stalinowskiego. I oczywiście świadectwa, które wydaje ŻIH, które też są przerażające i pokazujące, że bardzo podobne historie już kiedyś się zdarzały. Ale tych ludzi, przynajmniej moje pokolenie, a też pokolenie młodsze nie może zapytać, jak można z tym żyć. Ja nie pojmuję tego. Oczywiście jest to pytanie retoryczne. Ale jak Wy z tym radzicie? Nie wiem, Pan Paul, jak Pani, Pani Amro, jak Pan? No to tak.
Would you like to respond, Amra? You would like to respond?
No, I can't.
Okay. And also, yes.
I believe that all three of us, we have our own ways to deal with this. I have to say that it is, it happened in July 1995, but sometimes it's like now. Sometimes we miss them still, but also we found the reason to go on. My reason now, it's really to keep the memory. It is very important. What we learned, from the past is that all the things that we forgot happen again to remind us that it can happen to everyone and to everywhere. But anyway, we needed to learn how to live with that. But also, Srebrenica was a special case, I would say. At first we believed that they're keeping them at the concentration camps. So we were looking for them, we were trying to find them. We believe that we will find them, that the Red Cross or someone will find them and bring them back to us. So, even that it is maybe hard to understand, it was helpful because we get used. Until the moment when we realize that they are not coming, we used to live with them, without them, you know. So it's really hard to, not hard to explain in English, it's really hard to explain also in Bosnian language, you know. But also sometimes the things happen that taking us back to the 1995 immediately. For example, one of the commanders of the Bosnian Serbs military forces, of one of the units, he came last year in January and he gave a speech in Srebrenicy, you know. And the speaker, actually, that man was not important to me. I know what he was thinking, actually. I knew what he did. But the problem is that many of the people, Bosnian Serbs, who are living now in Srebrenica, for many of them I thought that we can go on, that we can live together, that we can do things together, that we have to deal like that. They were sitting there and they gave loud applause to him. You know, and then I started to think if everything that we are doing to, you know, two very important words Ambassador knows that in Bosnia are truth and reconciliation, you know. It's like to say just truth. I started to believe that people are using those words just to get some support for the projects that they are making.
Humanitarian.
Yeah,
Humanitarian.
really. Because we are still far from truth, and according to the events that happened in Srebrenica, like this one in January last year, we are far from the reconciliation, unfortunately. You know, because I asked one of my neighbors, of my friends, on the end, I believe that she's my friend. How could you take a seat, 2 seats far from him? Why you were there? Why you gave him an applause for that, what he says? Like he came to the front of them and he says, this is Serbian Srebrenica now, you know, and many other things. And she says, you know, I had to, because you know that I'm a member of one political party. So I needed to be there. I said, okay, I would understand that if you were somewhere behind, because I would be able to understand that you were forced in some way to be there, but you were sitting just 2 seats far from him, and I could see that you were satisfied with that you hit. That's the problem. That's the moment when we realize that it is not easy, that it is not getting better, and that we can't deal with that easy, you know. That we are still living maybe with I don't know how to say, actually with the constructors of the new ideology, maybe like that. So who promised to us that it is not going to happen? In this moment we have this separation problem in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republika Srpska, in which Srebrenica is part of that. The president, one of the presidents of Bosnia and Herzegovina, easily saying like, okay, we will separate from Bosnia. Unfortunately, nobody doesn't stop him. And if it happens, we will probably have a new conflict. Or if we don't have a conflict, we will need to move from this territory because we will not be able to stay. So it's really complicated also now, also today in Bosnia.
Let's go continue with the answer to the question, I think. Yes? Okay, so I would like Paul and Marin and Paul.
Could you please repeat the question, please?
How do you cope?
Repeat the question.
How do you
cope? Okay.
Psychologically, as a resilience?
That's a very good question, actually. How do I cope with this nightmare? Just to share with you some of the experience that I had. I had bad dreams more than 25 years, just bad dreams. Unable to sleep, Sometimes you sleep 15 minutes and a nightmare is just coming. Sometimes I could see people, in the shadow, carrying machete, trying to chase after me, trying to kill me. The shadow is just woke me up all the times. 15 minutes later, I go back to sleep. I went back to sleep, and the shadow is coming back again. It's just like a ghost right in front of you every time you sleep. So that was the bad situation. Another dreams that I always had is just like a black buffalo, blowing fires through the nose and trying to capture me and stomp on me and try to kill me. Many of those dreams, not just many of those bad dreams, come to me all the times. And I remember one time I woke up because of the bad dreams. I woke up, not technically woke up. In the dreams, I saw this, groups of people, groups of Khmerov, just a shadow of Khmerov, come to kill me. And I ran so hard, it was in the dream. And then I tried to remove myself, and then I end up kicking the wall, the real wall, and I broke the wall of the house. So that's how bad this dream was. So, with that, and how do I deal with that? Could not, because that's called post-traumatic stress disorders, PTSD. And I tried to face with the situation. I got up every night, and I do boxing with whatever the dreams come to me. I actually kickboxing. I'm still good right now with kickboxing, actually. Kickboxing, punching against the shadow in my dream. Not in my dream, got up to fight my dreams. Come on, face me. So that's how I deal with my situation. And then I start to realize that people ask me so many questions about how I lived, how I survived. And I started to write a book. I wrote it a little bit at a time. This is how I lived, this is how I survived. And then I did my own research. Where was I when because I came to the United States already. In year 2000, I went back to Cambodia to do my own research. Not for professional research, my own research, where I was at during that time. I tried to recognize, maybe there's a trees that I saw. Maybe there was a train track that I was talking about, the train track. So I looked for those places. And the road, the railroad track, the river. So I looked for those places, and then I'm trying to look for the mass grave that I see. With that, I tried to complete my book, and also I tried to find my older sister. I know that my mother died. I know my father was disappeared, never returned. My younger brother died also. Now, my question is, how do I connect myself to find my own relatives? Because I am the only person to survive in my entire family. So I went back and tried to ask people, just a blurry memory as a kid. I remember the river. I remember the Buddhist temple. I remember a certain place, so I asked people, do you know this person? Do you know my older sister's name is Ni, and I don't recognize cousin or uncle because I lost records of my own self. Zero. So it's just find my own story to reconnect myself to the culture and the Cambodia that I had, terrible history with, to connect myself with that. And then I started to do volunteer work in Cambodia to help children in on-call hospital for children. First, I signed up for 6 months, and then I ended up to volunteers for 5 years. It is a ways of dealing, coping with my personal PTSD. And then I come back to the United States. I tried to finish my master's program in public administration. I said, I must finish this book. When I finished, I must have a determination. 6 months after I finished my master, I must publish the book within a certain frame, a certain time. And I did. Since then, everything is just like complete. I never have any bad dreams again. I never have to fight at night with the dream. So with that, it has given me a sense of coping with my own self, the own reality. Because even though I live in America, it's a happy state, it's very nice and all the stuff, but inside the head it's not there. Because the bad dream is always there, but people did not know that, they did not understand that. So one time I was hired by the RAND Corporation to do a research on post-traumatic stress disorder in the United States. I contracted 1 year, and this is what we found out, that the soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan, when they returned to the United States, it's about 33 to 36% of them have post-traumatic stress disorder. As far as Cambodia, we have 66% have post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's what I gathered all the data, interviews over 500 people for that research.
Thank you very much, thank you. And I would like to ask Paul also about the same, how you are coping. Paul, I know that you have a little daughter, Lila, she's 1 year and 7 months, and another daughter, you loved your wife very much. I know that in Rwanda families, everything is very important, and little children now are important. It's a sign of hope, right?
Yeah.
Does it work? Well, let's try with this one.
Thank you. Coping with trauma was not easy, but I tried to stay positive. I love music.
And culture.
And culture.
Yesterday we were on where? On the Chopin concert in Łazienki.
Yeah.
He liked it very much.
I like culture, reading, and I like knowledge. Always to keep acquiring knowledge, because I consider that what happened during the genocide against the Tutsi, during the Holocaust, during the genocide against the Bosnian, in Cambodia, it's ignorance. So people who do that are ignorant. Even if the people who plan, they have the title doctors, professors, they create all these kind of ideologies. They are ignorant. They don't have values. Those values we acquire from families. Humanity. They don't have humanity. So I try always to understand what happened from the point of objectivity, like you say. I'm not neutral, of course, but I try to be positive about what I'm learning, and to try always to share with others, and even to share with my colleagues what I learned new about the Holocaust, for example, and then because I noticed that not many people focused on their own things. If it's a survivor of the Holocaust, so they master their own. But if we share as we share humanity, we can learn what happened, what parts of humanity that were damaged. I was asking my colleague that I have less knowledge about the genocide in against Bosniaks, and I was asking about the book that I can read, so that, but the book that was written by a survivor of that genocide, not from other people who would include like denialism and like distort the facts. I like always
First hand.
Yes, reading and educating myself keeps me awake and keeps me moving forward. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Paul. Just one thing to add, wait a second. Yesterday, when we pick you up from the airport, we pick Paul up from the airport. First question of Paul was, what is the name of this city in Poland? Białystok? Because we heard that in Białystok there is a manifestation, anti-homosexual manifestation, and it was a topic in Rwanda. And they were mentioned about it in Rwanda, so it's amazing because they are so alert, yes, and so really integrated with this complexity and to follow this complexity. That so thank you very much that you are alert, because sometimes in Poland we are not alert enough. Yes, I think that Meta, and there's one thing more, because you are the youngest one and you are the little one and you are the most brave one. Because you really, the road Rota had to make to come here, it's extraordinary. Could you tell me one thing after visiting of Jewish Historical Institute you are going to back with you home? In the end.
What I'm bringing back to
Yes,
Kambodża.
after today, after being here in former Warsaw Ghetto, and what the young generation feels in Cambodia. What do you think it would be useful for her to tell them right now, after your visit in Poland, after understanding the atmosphere in a young generation in Cambodia, second generation after the genocide, what they're looking for?
I think that after today I visited the institute and also the former, the ghettos tour. So I think I'm going to go back and first of all tell my colleagues of what I see here, of the explanation I heard from Professor Paweł. Yes, and the things is that I'm going to tell them about what happened here.
But what do they need now? What is the atmosphere? What is the social atmosphere in Cambodia? What your generation missed? What they would like to have to feel stronger? Because I understand the political situation is not very, very clear.
I think I'm going to tell them about the warning sign.
About
the warning sign, the warning sign.
The warning sign.
Yes. Like for example, I understand that during the Holocaust there are several warning signs that were not being noticed. For example, I heard from our tour guide about the airport that the Jews have to wear. And also I remember the Nuremberg law that limited the freedoms of the Jews, like they are not allowed to go to the park or even work for the government or even buy things from the non-Jews. So I'm going to share all of that with them.
Genocide happens, we say that to prepare genocide we need 25 years, but these first 20 years are happening on these social, very secret situations, right? Przepraszam. Genocide, we are saying in anthropology of genocide that we need 25 years to prepare genocide, but these first 20 years, it's happening at home, it's happening at school, it's happening in the church, it's happening in the hospital, it's happening within social societies, and the early warnings are there. Before the militaries are on the road, we really need 20 years to prepare. So I think yes, there.
And also one more thing. The thing is that the Holocaust happened for a longer years comparing to what happened during the Khmerov. Like for example, 40 years ago the Khmerov happened, but the Holocaust happened during the World War II. But then you guys keep talking about it, you guys keep educating people about it. So the thing is that, for example, a few more decades, there will be no longer survivors to talk to it. But even when that happened, we as a new generation, we have duty to remember. We have duty to share it to the next generation. So even when there are no longer survivors to talk to, we have to talk about it, we have to educate about it on their behalf. Because again, to talk about genocide, it is a genocide prevention.
Thank you very much. Thank you all, thank you very much, thank you very much. Thank you all for you. Dziękuję Państwu też bardzo, że też tu do we have time for a question? If yes, we can do it officially. If not, we can do it in couloir. What's your decision, Director? In couloir. In couloir. And you would like to, there will be some question, you are here. Thank you, dziękuję bardzo. I think that it's so really so we are so late, and I would like people also to have freedom to go. It is very tough here, but they are here for you. Bardzo dziękujemy, bardzo dziękujemy.